until 2017, a beekeeper could just go to any kind of like supply store, agriculture supply store, and pick up a bag of antibiotics to treat the beehive for potential bacterial infections. And in 2017, the regulation changed, and the FDA now requires that these beekeepers to actually contact a veterinarian who needs to then prescribe these antibiotics via a prescription or a veterinary feed directive. And for a lot of small animal veterinarians, they might have never written a veterinary feed directive in their life, while, you know, it's a common scenario in large animal practice. And so there's a certain probably intimidation factor of like, you know, I've never done this. And yet, if you start looking into it, it's actually much easier than writing a prescription. So this is one way how, you know, we try to educate our colleagues to, like, you know what, it's not a big deal. Yeah, it's a long word, veterinary feed directive, but it's super easy to do. And there is beautiful infrastructure out there that helps you do this, where you literally just have to print it out, fill your name in and the name of the client, and you're more or less done. So there's a lot of easy stuff there. It's just that it's, for a lot of people, brand new requests. They have not gotten a phone call from a beekeeper before and say, hey, I need an antibiotic because I think my girls are sick. And so that leads to the next thing, because legally it's the veterinarian who has to diagnose the disease. So while a lot of beekeepers are extremely experienced and they can diagnose European foul brood, for example, very accurately, it's actually the veterinarian who says, well, you know what, I need to be able to confirm your diagnosis before I write that veterinary feed directive or give you a script. There is definitely a need for education. And that's where basically that initial kind of like learning curve happens. Once you have done it once or twice, you're really good. But again, on the positive side, there's really good books available written by veterinarians for veterinarians about honeybee medicine. And I think it's really a great way for the veterinary community to be an active member and support an extremely, extremely important farm animal, the honeybee. We don't think of the honeybee as a farm animal, but it is. It's micro livestock. Beekeepers are actually farmers that take care of an animal. And the interesting difference between that farm animal and your traditional farm animal is that usually the farmer is 100% in control. How much grain does that milk cow get? You know, what is the kind of like food that my chickens get? Because I will order this, I will feed it to them, I will feed it at known quantities. And that's the biggest difference, that you're a farmer, you're taking care of these honeybees, but you have absolutely no control in what they're going to eat, because they're going to fly as far as 4 miles, they're going to fly to your neighbor's garden, they're going to fly maybe to the botanical garden, they're going to fly out and pollinate all these different blossoms, and that's the interesting concept. And then in the evening they come back to roost again. So, but we take care of them. We get them through the winter. Hopefully, we can hopefully help them fighting diseases with potentially these antibiotic helps. But also there's a lot of stuff that we can do to prevent the use of antibiotics, because a lot of this, as with any farm animal, management style is really important. It's a fascinating world to take as a veterinarian, to take care of honeybees, and you know, it gives you this warm feeling that you're actually helping to make the planet a little bit better. Honeybees are an economic superpower. 30% of everything that you eat all day long, 30% is pollinated or is benefited from honeybee services. So think about it. Without honeybees in our life, our supermarket would be very sad markets. So that's what a lot of people don't realize, and we need to contribute as much as we can to help our little girls. So one thing is, even if you're still a little bit too shy to actively touch the bee, touch the hive, go into the hive, you can help them by look around in your clinic. If you have a lawn, if you have grass that you're mowing, why are you mowing your grass? Put wildflowers out there. Make a nice pollinator garden out of it. People love it. the insects will love you for it, right? So that's actually, while it doesn't sound like this is a bigger deal, especially in urban areas, we know that pollinators struggle to find wildflowers. And so if every veterinary practice could set a little bit of their lawn aside and turn it into a wildflower meadow, that would be a huge contribution. So you're helping actively by actually providing them with refuge, with a source of food. And I think your clients will love you for it, because most of the time it looks beautiful to have wildflowers growing. So that's one way, to ease in. This would be your gateway drug, so to say. But then you can actively help with supporting your local beekeepers. So, like I mentioned before, beekeepers now need to reach out. They're forced to contact a veterinarian to write them a veterinary feed directive or a prescription for the antibiotic. So what I would say, if you're somehow interested, join your local beekeepers association. They usually meet once a month or maybe twice a month. Go to those meetings, mingle with those people. They're great people in general. You can learn a lot from them, especially if you are kind of interested in thinking that you eventually want to have your own bees eventually. Because, for example, I used to practice in Massachusetts. Now I'm practicing down in Georgia, and I had bees in Massachusetts and I have bees in Georgia. Whatever worked for me, for example, in July in Massachusetts is not working at all in Georgia. So there's a saying in the beekeeping community that all beekeeping is local. So, and that's really true, because it depends on the climate. Just think about winterizing your bees in Florida versus in Saskatchewan. Very different winterizing process, very different length of winter, depth of winter. So, but yet in both places you can be a very successful beekeeper. But you have to obviously adjust your practices to the local area. And so basically, once you are interested in this, then basically start with a couple hives. Maybe you want to have a couple hives outside of your clinic, or in your own backyard at home. I find it really interesting. It's a little bit paradoxical, because what I find is, no matter how stressful for your day was and whatever happened in the clinic, and you just feel like, oh my God, spend a little bit time with your bees. And it is a little bit like Zen meditation. It sounds contraindicative, but if you're surrounded by 40,000 flying, buzzing insects, the sound that you're hearing, it's very calming to you, because you have to move slowly. You look at your little girls and you're in the zone, you're in the bee zone. I feel like a changed person. I'm calmer, and I'm pretty sure my blood pressure is lower, and I just feel happy. And I think, so everybody talks about work-life balance. I think this is a perfect thing to calm down from a stressful day and to actively contribute to the One Health point. There's a lot of research coming, has been collected everywhere, globally, Europe, you name it. And the pollinators, which I think we need to include more than the honeybee, right? So when we talk about the honeybee, it's obviously our flagship model, and because it's fantastic to take care of them. But don't forget about the bumblebees. Don't forget about the monarch butterflies, right? And there's really good publications out there that they're under extreme pressure. A paper out of Germany looked at it over a course of, I think, something like 18 years, where they surveyed wildflower meadows. And over 18 years, I think they were able to document something like an 80% loss of pollinator density, so which is actually pretty sad. The density of pollinators and insects is significantly low. And we know that the huge biomass on this planet, the biggest percentage of biomass, are the invertebrates, are these pollinators, are those little insects. So when we hear insects and we hear this, we immediately think of pest control, right? But we need to shift that idea. We need to shift that idea to have a warm, fuzzy feeling about our pollinators, because without them, like I said, the supermarket is gonna look very sad. And also we don't really, like, even if somebody says, well, I'm a meat eater, I don't care about, peaches, I don't need to care about, but think about it, the grass that your cow eats is dependent on pollination services too. So without the bees, you don't have your steak either. So you can't escape the fact that that pollination services, specifically of the honeybee, are exquisitely important. The diseases that the honeybees are presented with, the bacterial diseases where we use antibiotics for, they're not really diseases that affect us, the beekeeper, or anything. It's actually interesting because it doesn't even affect the adult honeybee, and that's how that disease maintains in the colony so well, because these diseases affect, like in so many other species, it affects the newborns, right? Where the immune system is just not there. Just with baby birds, they succumb to a lot of viruses too, because even in human medicine, we consider the babies and our elderly generation as a little bit immune compromised, right? And so it's the same thing with the honeybee. So these bacterial diseases usually affect the larvae when they're 12 to 40 hours old. And they're getting infected by the adult nurse bees that brings basically the food into the cell to feed the babies, but the adults are not susceptible to it. So it's a very narrow window of susceptibility to those babies, but it's devastating. It kills a lot of them. And also regarding One Health, one of the topics that we discussed yesterday a little bit was called integrated pest management. And that whole idea is there's multiple different ways how you can manage this situation to prevent actually the outbreak of diseases, where you improve the quality for the bees, where you prevent these diseases, where you prevent these pests, these parasites to come in before you need to use pharmaceuticals like an antibiotic, like an antiparasitic. So it is exactly like farm animal medicine, because a really smart farmer doesn't constantly want to throw medication on his livestock, because there's withdrawal times that you have to worry about, and you have to dump the milk, or you have to discard the bodies. So it's exactly the same. We have a lot of tools in our tool belt to take care of this situation, and unfortunately sometimes you have a breakthrough, even though you're doing everything okay, and in that case then we have to break out the antibiotics or the antiparasitics. So it's exactly the same, just on a smaller scale. So luckily for you, if you're interested in it and you want to learn more, like I said, there's really great resources available for you. So the old traditional textbook. So there's a really good textbook which is called Honeybee Medicine. It's edited by Dr. Terry Kane, who is a veterinarian, very, very experienced with bee medicine. And a lot of chapters are written by also veterinarians who are interested in helping out bees. And that book takes you literally from like, what is a bee? What is the biology of the bee? Where does the bee come from? How long have we been working with the bee? How do the bees live in the wild? How do we manage them in captivity? To obviously, how do we prevent these diseases? How do we manage the disease? And how would we make their life better? So this book is written by American veterinarians, but there's also, interesting enough, there is a European book also available, also Honeybee Medicine for Veterinarians. And in Europe, veterinarians are not allowed to use antibiotics at all in their beehive. So that means that for the beekeeper, there's no real need to contact the veterinarian, but the veterinarian can improve significantly on a professional, on a large-scale apiary, because you can do a sanitary inspection. You can talk about this stuff that I just mentioned with integrated pest management, like how often do you disinfect your hive tool? How often do you disinfect your gloves or your bee suit? How close are the beehives together from each other? All this is epidemiological knowledge, and I think we can help educating our beekeeping friends with this. So we can definitely bring something to the table, much more than just a bucket of antibiotics or antiparasitica. So that's really cool.